But let's talk about the quarterback, because that's the one guy we haven't really dove deep into. Jacoby Brissett, I think he continues to be okay, nothing special. But really, Greg, in my estimation, he's been as good as you could expect him to be, given who he is and given the circumstances he's dealing with. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. I mean, especially like in some of the sacks that he's avoided. I mean, that one was that at the end of the game, where it looked like he was almost going to go down for a safety, and he's dancing around and he gets the ball out.
Yeah.
I had him for 5+ throws in this game, and 4 of them were against pressure. Now I did have him for the 2 pressures allowed. He had a throw, that rollout to Jalen Polk, for example, and everybody probably remembers it. It's a rollout to the right. Brissett has Polk's open, or as open as you're going to get in the NFL, and Jacoby missed him, and he should have made the throw. Now, there are more circumstances to that. If you go back and you watch the film, KJ Osborne is blocking the end, and he does it for about 0.5 seconds, and then he just stands there. He literally turns around, tries to put his butt on the defender, and all of a sudden the guy takes off, and he's in Jacoby's face, and he makes that throw much harder than it needed to be. Now, I still don't absolve Jacoby. He still should have made the throw. An NFL quarterback should make that throw. But it's just like the little attention to details on something like that aren't happening. But I think, Nick, what we've seen so far through 2 weeks, Nick, is about what we expected. Now, I will say, I think Jacoby Brissett, in terms of not taking sacks, like I said, his decisiveness, not really holding the ball, those were all things that have been, a staple of his play in the NFL to this point. It gets him into a lot of trouble. Now, he doesn't, he's been one of the most sacked quarterbacks in terms of rate since he came into the league, and he's doing a great job of avoiding that and putting this team into worse circumstances. Now, we also knew sort of going into this that Jacoby is what he is. He's not going to elevate anybody, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you have a team that does not protect well, he's going to have issues. When you have a team that their wide receivers don't win off of man coverage, I'm just looking because I had the stats. When they don't win off of man coverage, Jacoby's not going to, make things happen out of thin air like some quarterbacks. And now the hope is you have a guy in Drake May who's warming and getting ready, and he'll eventually be that type of guy that can elevate that unit. I still wouldn't rush it, but the Patriots were 8 of 17 for 48 yards against man coverage. Man coverage is about talent. The Seahawks, conversely, were 11 of 17 for 107 yards and 7 passing first downs against man coverage. And the Patriots were 8 of 17 for 48 yards. They were 6 of 8 for 72 yards against zone. I'm guessing that was probably mostly Hunter Henry early on in the game before the Seahawks played more and more man coverage as the game went on. And that's sort of where you saw the passing offense really disappear, because, really beating man coverage is about talent among the receivers and tight ends and what have you. It's not really about scheme. It's just man beating man. Zone is more about scheme beating the coverage. And, what we see so far is the Patriots aren't good enough on the outside to beat man coverage, and that's going to continue to be an issue.
It's really if that passing offense can possibly turn around given the personnel limitations they have. And Tayler, sorry to jump in there, but this isn't a new problem. I mean, you knew this problem.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we like to use Vidarian Lowe as the lightning rod here, but frankly, I didn't notice him in a bad way very often. I noticed Mike Nwenu get beat 2 or 3 times pretty badly. So I know we like to talk about all the, the other
Twice.
ways that the tackles they brought in haven't worked out. But Nwenu didn't have a great game either. That sack that you're talking about for Jacoby Brissett, I don't understand why he's getting crap for taking that, because Layden Robinson got beat inside while Nwenu got beat. There was nowhere for Jacoby to go. So I think it's less on one guy just tackle. Everybody needs to play better. Like I said, Michael Jordan is responsible for a sack. Layden Robinson is responsible for a sack. Mike Nwenu got beat enough times that you're saying, oh, like I was like, man, it would gotta be nice if you had the option to put Chooks out there on the right side where he is comfortable. So, I mean, the reality is it is the NFL. Most people have issues on the offensive line because it's a position of attrition. Not a lot of units make it through the entire season without losing somebody crucial. Obviously, the Patriots started behind the 8 ball because they already had tackle problems. But the best case scenario for this unit was Vidarian Lowe just being fine. Then in the interior, you have City So and Layden Robinson building week to week and giving you a good pocket. And then if you have to have Mike Nwenu at tackle, as long as he survives, you're fine. I thought everybody contributed to this performance. And another reason why you need to get Pop more involved, because you can get the ball out of your quarterback's hands and let the receivers do some of the work so that the offensive line isn't being put in a bad position where, like, one of the refs that I think it was Michael Jordan lost a sack. He gave up one-on-one. And I put in my game plan, you cannot let Leonard Williams get a one-on-one matchup. But to do that, you had to stay out of obvious passing situations. The Seahawks used a rush front, created a one-on-one with one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league against a guy who's frankly right now on the Patriots practice squad. Really smart by Seattle, but there's so many things to go into that. But schematically, you need to give your tackles and your offensive line a bit more help. And I wish they had done that on early downs by trying to get more, by just getting the ball.
100%. There are times where you can scheme around a poor offensive line play, right? There was a time where you looked at me, you're like, nobody's covering Pop right now. There's a 10-yard cushion right there. Grab the football and throw it to him and see what happens. He's your best offensive player.
They have RPOs. Like, they're running them. They're just not throwing the screen options.
So I just don't understand why you won't even try and do something like that. Again, the 3 targets across 2 games for him is inexcusable. And same with like Jalen Polk. I thought he looked good to start the day. The touchdown on the 5-yard, that 5-yard in route, obviously, but then nothing after that. It's like the receivers are the problem. Obviously, the offensive line is a problem too, but you can scheme yourself out of that, and they just almost haven't tried to do it yet. They continue to drop Jacoby back, make him try and make these reads. Those guys aren't getting open downfield, so he either has to make something out of nothing, dump it to a tight end, dump it to a running back, etc. It doesn't look right now.
You do not just get to blame Alex Van Pelt or the pass protection, which was dreadful, or even Jacoby Brissett. It goes to the receivers too. The Seahawks increased their man coverage rate late in the game. Around the second quarter, they said, okay, cool. You know what we're going to do? We're going to load the box. We're going to play man coverage. Against man coverage, the Patriots averaged 3 yards per play. Against zone coverage, it was 5.5. As the old saying goes, when it comes to receivers, coaches get them open against zone. But when it's man-to-man, it's up to you. So to me, when I watched this film, Demario Douglas had the only case for what the hell is going on. A case he's now taken publicly, by the way, speaking in the locker room today to our guy, Doug Kyed, among others, saying, last year I felt like I could prove myself. This year, not so much. Speaking, though, of Jacoby Brissett in the passing game, I should know better than to do this after week 2 because I knew this was coming. As soon as the Patriots lose, as soon as the offense stumbles, you're going to have folks out there clamoring for Drake May. We're going to do it anyway. I'm breezing through this yellow light, okay? Because here's the deal. I know how it goes. Offense struggles, team loses. Bench the quarterback. Fire the coach. Okay, no one's firing Gerard, man. So, of course, you want to start the top 3 pick for Jacoby Brissett, who only had, I don't know what they're in here, like 149 passing yards, right? Here's the problem with that. I have a question for you. Do you want Drake May behind an offensive line that has been blitzed all of 6 times in 2 games and allowed pressure on 45% of those dropbacks? All dropbacks. Seems hazardous to me. And you could say, oh, Drake May would escape better and he would throw long. And you know what? Yeah, he probably would throw a little bit longer. This dude is a gunslinger. We saw it in North Carolina, the good plays, the bad plays. He's going to chuck it. But through 2 weeks, would he rank 10th in QBR, which is a refined version of passer rating that actually accounts for fumbles and scrambles in game situation, unlike passer rating? Would he rank 10th in success rate, which means how well are you doing as a quarterback keeping your offense on schedule? Would he even be 15th in EPA per play? Because Jacoby Brissett right now is walking the same path Mac Jones did to his utter demise in New England, getting overloaded with pressure in weeks 1 and week 2, going to play the Jets in week 3. We all know what happened to Dallas in week 4 last year, New Orleans after that. Mac lost his mind. Okay. Jacoby Brissett is not losing his mind right now. He's keeping the whole offense together. And I get that when you watch him take 3 sacks like he did on Sunday, you think it's his fault, when in reality, he's doing an unbelievable job of taking bad situations and not making them worse, because in the 28 times he's been hit or hurried, he has been sacked just 4 times. That 14% pressure to sack rate, again, when it's bad, how quickly does it go worse? For Jacoby Brissett, it's just 14%. Is among the best in the entire league, and it would be in any kind of season. It's a freaking miracle.
I understand why people are maybe annoyed with Jacoby Brissett at this point. I think he is being he is being pretty conservative, and that's definitely a part of it. But right now, I mean, they don't have time for anything to develop. They don't have time for anything to develop in the passing game, especially on third down when they need some of these bigger plays. I think it was so they had 15 third downs in this game. They threw on 11 of them. 7 of those 11, Brissett was pressured. More than half of their pressures came on third down, and I think it was 3 of the 7. It was 3 or 4 of the 7, so about half were multiple pressures. What I mean is like multiple linemen lost, and Brissett was under pressure from multiple spots. So that to me is where it starts. And we can talk about Brissett and we can talk about the wide receivers. And I'm not saying there's nothing to discuss there. And I know I sound like a broken record because I feel like I've been giving this take for 3 years. And I know you guys get annoyed at me for giving it because you want to complain that they have no receivers and you want to complain that they don't have a star quarterback. And I get that. I understand that. But none of that matters if you don't have time for these plays to develop. How are you going to throw a 40-yard bomb if the receiver doesn't have time to run 40 yards down the field, right? And that, to me, is where Pop Douglas comes in. Because what this offense is screaming for, all right, so you can't throw the ball downfield. How are you going to create explosive plays in the passing game? Get the ball in the hands of guys that can create after the catch and turn a 5-yard air pass into a 20, 25-yard game. That is Pop Douglas. And they should be able to design some quick-hitting stuff to him, or at least move him up in the progressions. We were talking about this yesterday in the locker room, Brian, like looking at how often is he Jacoby Brissett's first or second read. It doesn't look like it that much.
The pressure, it just got way too much at the end of the game. And that was even, Mike Onwenu, who's your highest paid offensive lineman, who's supposed to be one of your rocks, up front. Like, he had some challenges, like on the last 2 drives, he was getting beat almost every play. It seemed like, so maybe that goes back to our conversation. Like, is he better at guard than a tackle? But the offensive line was definitely the biggest weak link. And now all 5 of them are on the injury report.
Patriots still can't get their wide receivers involved. And while they threw the ball a lot more in the first half, they ended up with 3 catches on 6 targets to their wide receivers for 19 yards. That is on Alex Van Pelt and that offense. And look, there's offensive line issues that I detailed again. I had them down for 15 pressures on 33 dropbacks, which is, again, an absurd number. Last week, I had them at 48%. That, I believe, is 45%. That's not sustainable. You could tell as the second half went on, Jacoby Brissett went from looking down the field to looking at the rush. He still bailed them out a bunch of times, either not taking the sack by, sort of scrambling and throwing the ball away, or even in a couple cases making plays off the scramble. But that's not his game, and that's what they're forced him to do. And then I'll give you another one. Really bad clock management before the end of the half. They had the ball pinned inside their own 20, and they're sort of caught betwixt and between. Like, do we want to try to throw the ball here, or do we want to just run the clock out? And Seattle wisely, and I was critical of them. I'm like, use the timeout here. They're not in any hurry. You're going to get the ball back. Well, they saved their timeouts. The Patriots ends up throwing some incomplete passes, and then Seattle goes right down the field, kicks a field goal right before the half. It was a 3-point game. I know 3 points in overtime, but they gift them the 3 points by not being totally sure of how they wanted to handle that. So to me, a lot of issues came to roost for the Patriots that we talked about in week 1. The margin for error for this team with a roster that is devoid of blue chippers, that is devoid of explosive skill players. Their longest play yesterday, was a tight end screen. Well, their longest pass play was a tight end screen to Hunter Henry. The ball was thrown 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage. They just caught him in the right call. Henry storms down the sidelines, doesn't have to make any moves. Like, that's the extent of their explosives in the passing game. Like, they are so challenged that if it doesn't go right, if they make one little mistake or 2 mistakes, they're just not good enough to overcome it.
Support us and sign up at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS or download the app today and use code CLNS at prizepicks.com/CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5.